Hello and welcome to another episode of Cancelled Games, where we look at some of the unreleased titles for a particular system. Today it's Nintendo's handheld, the 3DS, a console that I'm quite fond of. Let's have a look at 10 of its games that never made it to release. Kaio King of Pirates was a 3DS game being made by Keiji Inafune, who worked at Capcom for a long time and worked on many of their popular franchises, particularly the Mega Man series. After leaving Capcom in 2010, he started two companies, Concept and Intercept, who would be developing this game with Marvelous Publishing. Announced in 2011, Kaio King of Pirates had a planned 2012 release date and was based on the romance of the Three Kingdoms, set during the Three Kingdoms period of Chinese history. It was also stated that it would play like Dynasty Warriors, which was also based on the Three Kingdoms era, so presumably the gameplay would have incorporated hack and slash combat. Concrete details are thin on the ground though regarding the story and gameplay, and this trailer seems to be the only surviving media from the game. The star and namesake of Kaio was this penguin pirate character, and the game's large roster of characters were all animals. You'd sail the seas, swashbuckle, usual pirate stuff. Kaio missed its planned release date of 2010 and was pushed back to 2014, but the publisher announced its cancellation in early 2015. During its development, they reportedly pumped almost $4 million into Kaio. Considering the amount of money spent and the number of years it was in development, it must have been developed to a reasonable degree, so maybe some gameplay footage or a prototype will pop up at some point. Hold on to your hats, hardcore gamers, this next one is an action-packed garden simulator. My Garden was being developed by EA in 2009, a couple of years prior to the console's release. This would have been one of EA's first games for the handheld, although never had an announced release date. In My Garden, your job was to cultivate a diverse garden of plants achieved by planting seeds. Each of the plants would do something different, and there would be 300 unique flowers and plants to collect. Gotta catch 'em all. To care for your garden, you would need to tend to your plants, and you could also decorate the garden with objects other than plants. Throughout the game, you're assisted by a guide called Tanuki, who helps you collect and grow the plants, as well as unlock tools and different suits that attract different animals to your garden. Presumably these animals would aid with pollination, enriching the soil and so on. The gameplay would also include missions, photo challenges, and make use of the 3DS's motion controls and microphone. For example, shaking the 3DS would disperse pests, and whistling into the mic could attract birds. EA hoped to emulate, quote, the delight of owning a garden through a 3D visually stunning experience. In reality, the gameplay just wasn't there. Although it looked good, it seems that My Garden was in practice very boring and the gameplay wasn't very intuitive. EA cancelled My Garden before the 3DS even launched, stating that they didn't think it would appeal to a large enough audience. Bomberman 3DS was the working title of a planned 3DS entry in the Bomberman series, being developed by Hudson Soft and to be published by Konami. Sadly, there is no footage of this one, we only have a few screenshots, but they're enough to give us an idea, and Bomberman games are always somewhat similar. Well, there is a clip a few seconds long, but it's so poor that it's not even really worth showing. It would feature a single player story mode and multiplayer modes, up to 4 players locally and 8 online. The story mode was said to be similar to that in Bomberman 64: The Second Attack, featuring co-op action-adventure gameplay and special bomb types which aided in puzzle solving. During the single-player campaign, Bomberman would have a health bar, but what's really unusual is that the screenshots show these health bars in the multiplayer mode as well. Announced in 2010, again before the handheld's release, Bomberman 3DS was never given an official title, but was slated to release in 2011. Then in 2011, Konami began the process of absorbing Hudson Soft, which was dissolved in early 2012, so this 3DS Bomberman entry was cancelled. Bomberman fans had to wait until 2017 to get a new game in the series with Super Bomberman R on the Switch. DJ Hero 3D was a planned 3DS entry in the DJ Hero series, developed by Freestyle Games and published by Activision. Announced at 2010's E3, where the 3DS itself was also announced, before the release of DJ Hero 2, DJ Hero 3D would be a launch title for Nintendo's new handheld. Again, we only have a couple of screenshots here. Playing DJ Hero on the go would need an alternative control method, as one could hardly plug in one of the DJ Hero turntable controllers and lug that around. The scratching and mixing would instead be performed using the 3DS's touchscreen. The E3 announcement in 2010 showed a demo, but that was all that was ever shown of DJ Hero 3D. Activision cancelled it, along with the series in general, after the poor sales of DJ Hero 2. Gunlord was originally released in 2012, coming to the Neo Geo AES and MVS and the Sega Dreamcast, and was subsequently re-released on the Switch and PS4. Developed by NG Dev Team, it's a run and gun game very similar to Turrican. The developers cited not only Turrican as an inspiration, but also Metroid and Contra, but the game looks and feels very Turrican, right down to the music. The player character runs through platforming levels, blasting both ground-based and flying enemies with an array of different weapons, and can also turn into a spinning ball, again reminiscent of the Turrican series. It's a wonderful homage to these classic games with some well presented modern polish. In 2013, NG Dev Team launched an Indiegogo campaign to bring Gunlord to the 3DS and Wii U after becoming an authorised developer. This would be a digital release available via Nintendo's eShop. Its funding goal was €40,000, but it failed to gain any traction and was cancelled due to poor performance. Mega Man Legends 3, known as Rockman-3 in Japan, was a planned sequel to Mega Man Legends 2, released for the PlayStation in 2000 and later for Windows and the PSP in Japan. Legends 3 was announced in late 2010. Its story would follow on directly from its predecessor, introducing some new characters to the cast. Mega Man Legends 3 was discussed as far back as 2007, and when series lead Keiji Inafune left Capcom in late 2010, the project continued its development. The plan was first to release a prologue to the game called Mega Man Legends 3 Prototype Version. This would come to Nintendo's eShop in 2011 and be a cut down version of the game featuring 10 missions. At New York Comic Con in 2010, Capcom asked fans for input in choosing the design of the game's as yet unnamed 14-year-old female heroine, later named Aero. A poll was created and fans could choose to vote on one of these 9 character designs. Eventually this design by Shinsuke Kamaki was chosen. Other aspects of the game's design would also be chosen by fans, and fans could even submit their own designs via the game's website. Capcom cancelled Mega Man Legends 3 in July 2011. After fans expressed their disappointment, Capcom tweeted that it was due to lack of fan involvement, a statement which didn't impress fans much, and Capcom later had to apologise. After this, a significant movement started to bring the game back, with many thousands of people campaigning for its reinstatement. Inafune even offered to finish development of the game with his own studio, but Capcom weren't up for that. Capcom have stated that neither the full game nor the prototype version were ever developed to completion. Despite being cancelled almost 10 years ago, Mega Man Legends 3's revival is still talked about to this day by fans and the development team alike. Seaman, the very weird virtual pet simulator for the Sega Dreamcast, was headed to the 3DS. In Seaman, you care for a fish with a human face. The player has to monitor his well-being and check in on him daily, as one would with other virtual pets like a Tamagotchi. Throughout the game you develop several of these creatures, from an egg to various forms of sea creature, eventually evolving to a frog-like creature with limbs. Interaction with this fish-human mutant hybrid is achieved using a dismembered hand, which can be used to interact with Seaman directly and alter things like the water temperature and amount of air. The face buttons control various things like view, zooming in and out, and even petting the creature, for example tickling it. The unique selling point was the use of the Dreamcast microphone attachment, through which the player could command and interact with Seaman. Nintendo were particularly interested in the microphone aspect and wanted to bring Seaman to the 3DS to make use of its built-in microphone. It seems that development on a 3DS port of Seaman was started, but was abandoned due to complications, although it's not clear what these issues were. Chocobo Racing 3D, likely a working title, was planned for the 3DS and announced by Square Enix at E3 in 2010. It's unknown if this would be a sequel to the original released on the PlayStation in 1999 or a remake of it. Only some screenshots here and a very brief clip that's awful quality. It was announced in late 2013 that the game had been officially cancelled. Square Enix stated that it wasn't up to standard, and bizarrely that they would prefer to develop games for console that are aimed at adults. What? The first Chocobo Racing was on console, so that statement makes no sense, and also the 3DS is the perfect system for games targeted at kids. Saints Row DriveBy would be a spin-off of the Saints Row series. Unfortunately, we know very little about this game. The footage you're seeing here is of Saints Row the Third, as we don't even have screenshots of DriveBy. THQ stated that development began as a title for Xbox Live Arcade and PSN, as well as a 3DS version, which Nintendo were keen on as they wanted to expand their appeal to mature gamers. They wanted a mature game available at the 3DS's launch, and Saints Row DriveBy would fill that void. Announced prior to the release of Saints Row the Third, the Xbox version would have some sort of interactivity between the two games. The Xbox and PlayStation versions were cancelled by THQ in May 2011, with the 3DS version being scrapped soon after. I'm breaking a rule here and showing you a game you've already seen, as Colt County appeared in my PS Vita episode. I thought it was worth showing here too, as there's footage of it actually running on a 3DS. Being developed by Renegade Kid, Colt County was a first-person psychological horror game headed to PC, Wii U, PS3 and PS4, Xbox One, and PS Vita, 360 and 3DS ports were stretch goals. A Kickstarter campaign was launched for Colt County in the first half of 2014, but didn't reach its funding goal of £438,000. In fact, it only raised around $35,000, under a tenth of its target. The team described it as The Walking Dead meets Silent Hill 2, having an emphasis on evoking a sense of isolation and loneliness, and it would be released episodically. In other words, it was aiming to be a first-person Silent Hill or Resident Evil horror game, but with a story told in episodes a la The Walking Dead games. There were at least 4 episodes planned, and each episode would have a self-contained storyline with an overarching plot that would span the entire series. The game's protagonist explores a small Texan town in which he's searching for his sister. He soon stumbles across some strange goings-on and some sinister cult activity, hence the game's name. The available demo footage is very bare bones, showing only the engine as the player character walks around town amid a fierce dust storm holding a wrench. After the Kickstarter campaign fell well short of its goal, Renegade Kid tried to no avail to find a publisher for Colt County and then closed their doors in 2016. So that was 10 cancelled 3DS games. Let me know if any of these tickled your fancy, and as always, thanks for watching. You can find the rest of the cancelled games series in this playlist.